We're here today to talk about maps, but this is one of our fireside chat style webinars. So for those of you who haven't joined our fireside chats before, it's a little bit more casual, a little bit more interactive. We do have a presentation for you to get you some of that good technical information that you might want to have on hand as you're managing your forest, but we'll also have some time for questions and for people to share their own stories about how they've been using maps in their own forest and chat a little bit with each other towards the end of the hour. So I will go ahead and get started with an interesting new tool that we have that we wanted to share with folks because we thought it would be interesting for people to hear about. We have been working with our friends at EcoTrust down in Portland on a new tool called Land Mapper, and Land Mapper is available for both Oregon and Washington. So I'm on the Washington map right now. And I wanted to give you just a kind of a very quick introduction on how it's used and the type of maps that can be created through Land Mapper. They're not the type of maps that you would get from a professional forester, but they're a pretty darn good place to start if you're just getting into land management and want to see some of the basic information that you would need in order to manage your land. So I'm at the Washington Land Mapper right now. And you have the option once you get to Land Mapper to either select the property on a map or enter your address. I'm just going to go ahead and select a random property so you just get a feel for how that happens. You can zoom in using your mouse to any point in Washington. I'm just zooming into a random area so you can see how that map changes as I zoom in. And once you get to the area where you're wanting to create a map, you'll use your mouse to click on a couple of different property areas, depending on which areas you want to make a map from. And if you accidentally click on an area that's not part of a map that you want to create, you can just click on it again and it'll disappear. So once you've clicked on the properties, the tax lot properties that you're wanting to make a map from, you click next and then name your property. Let's just call that test. And then you would go ahead and hit create maps. Now it does take about a full minute for these maps to be created. So as much as I would love to sit in silence with you, I went ahead and created some maps earlier so that we don't have to sit here and wait for the little cursor to load. And thank you, Kit, for allowing us to use your property as an example. So this is an example of the maps that Land Mapper can create. Only takes a couple of minutes in order to create these, and then once you've registered on the site, you can also download them into a PDF. I'm just admitting a couple of extra people here in the room. So once you have these maps, you can go through, and these are all of the map types that you are able to automatically generate through Land Mapper. You start with kind of an overview that includes the elevation range, the zoning, and the watershed. You then have an aerial photo, which is what a lot of folks use as the basis for creating their management unit maps. There's a street map that gives you a little bit of context about where a property is, and you can download any of these maps individually or all as a group into a single PDF. There's a terrain map that gives you a sense of what the elevation gain is on the property. A streams map with the stream type, and they have the data sources on all of these maps, which show you who these maps are being pulled from. So it's not EcoTrust that's actually creating the maps themselves. All of this information is coming from the Washington State DNR. So this is the information that they have on file. Then there's a soil types map. You can see this is all 16C, and then right underneath the soil types map is a little bit more information about what that means. Okay, 16C, that's Harstein, gravelly, ashy, loamy, ashy, sandy loam. And then there are a couple of forest types map, which how complex these are really depend on your individual forest. Some of them, like this one, are going to be obviously very Doug fir, Western hemlock dominated, maybe with some shrubby areas outside the property boundaries. Others might have a bit more complexity if you have different types of forests within your forest property. Maybe you have more hardwood, more oak in there, and that will hopefully show up in these maps. Forest size map kind of tries to estimate the diameter class of the different trees on the property. Forest canopy is showing how close the canopy cover is. And then the forest density is trying to make a guess based on those aerial images about how dense the forest is. So that's just a very quick run through of the maps that are available for Land Mapper. The good news is they are freely available for anyone who wants to check them out. The bad news is that so far they're not geo-referenced, and I know Gustavo will be getting into why that's important in a second. But they are hoping to get these maps geo-referenced in the next update in a few months, so it's something to keep an eye on, and we'll be sending out a little bit more information to folks after this webinar. So for folks who are wanting to check it out and try to make their own maps, we'll be able to get you that link. And I think that is it for me on kind of the quick overview of Land Mapper. I'd love to turn it over to Gustavo. And Gustavo, if you want to share a little bit about your background and how you use maps, and then Gustavo's going to take us on a bit of a dive for once you have those maps, what do you do with them?
Yeah, howdy, my name is Gustavo. I'm a forester with Northwest Natural Resource Group. I've just a little bit of background in my field work. I've been a part-time field technician for 2 years while I was in college, and then after that I was full-time for 2 years as a field technician. And at this point, I'm almost 1 year in as a full-time forester. Um, I I'd like to say that I specialize in harvest layout and permitting, and I help coordinate a lot of that with Northwest Natural Resource Group. A lot of the landowners that we have, we like to coordinate and manage the harvest that they have. So Avenza has been an amazing tool to use. I've seen many people walk around with Garmin's and high level and high technology Garmin's that are extremely accurate. I've in my professional life, I've never used one, and I've been able to manage hundreds and hundreds of acres of harvest using just Avenza and ArcGIS, of course, as the back end. But in the field, Avenza is amazing for the fact that it's free, and the pay price is also pretty good. So yeah, I'll just jump into my slideshow. I'll just talk about how it's used, the important features, and how I've used it in the past.
And Gustavo, are you going to share your screen for the slideshow?
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. I should be sharing here. Okay. So yeah, so this is Avenza in the field. There's my contact information. If I'm gonna try and keep it quick, but it's there's a lot of features that are extremely useful out there for land managers that I'd like to get out there. And if I don't have enough time, feel free to contact me. I'm more than happy to talk you through anything we don't cover. There's my introduction, a couple little details about me, but yeah. So the first thing you need to do is gather your maps. As Rowan alluded to, land mapper maps aren't currently geo-referenced. So the problem with that is you can't really share any of the points, lines, any features that you create on Avenza without it being geo-referenced. But on top of that, you can't even use the maps in general. It won't actually let you create these features. So it's important that you have geo-referenced maps. They're usually in PDF form. And as Rowan alluded to, the Washington versions of the Land Mapper map should be available soon. But in this case, we'll be using NNRG in-house maps. Again, thanks Kit for letting us use your property as an example. So these are some of the maps that are created through the Land Mapper, and they're the same. They should be the same maps that you can use. And these are the three maps that we're gonna look at for the in-house usage. Okay, so step one. At this point, I'm gonna assume you've downloaded all your maps. So make sure they're downloaded onto your mobile device. And like I said, they have to be PDFs, and um, you'll just have to go in, load up Avenza, and then it should be blank like this. Can you see my mouse? I forgot to check that. Yeah, okay. So yeah, so it'll say there's nothing here. You'll just click on the little plus sign here. Download is usually the best way once you've downloaded it all. I usually go for the cloud storage, which is this option here, and that should be on your mobile device. Once that's selected, you should go into your files and find those specific ones. In this case, these are the ones, like I said, these are the ones that Land Mapper created, and you can see these are maps not referenced, so you can't really use them. And you can see kits are up here, and these are the ones we're going to use. And this is them showing up. As you can see, it doesn't have that error anymore, so we can easily use whatever we need for this. So let's go through the basic three tools that you'll be provided with. I didn't provide this the original image, but down here there's like you can drag your phone up, and these options will show up. So the first two are location, which pretty much shows you where you are on the map. It gives you coordinates, the bearing, so that it comes with a little compass for you to use, but I would always recommend having a hand compass for declination purposes. It'll tell you your accuracy as well. I wasn't able to show this through my screenshots. Originally, I wanted to just plug my phone in and just walk through Avenza with everyone here, but I couldn't figure it out. So the best option was taking screenshots. And in this particular case, since I wasn't on Kit's property while I was making this, my dot won't show up. But usually when you're walking around, there'll be a dot, and around it there will be a blue circle, and that's pretty much your accuracy. The bigger that blue circle is, the worse your accuracy is. So that's location, and then tracking is pretty much the same thing. The only difference is at the bottom you have a start tracking button, and all that does is it starts a line feature from where you are, and then it follows you around until you tell it to stop. And then the last feature on this set of three is navigation. So for the navigation, I've only ever really used navigate to feature, and when you select that, it's just a list of all the features you have on your layers, and you just pick the one you want, and it'll draw a straight line to wherever you need, whichever feature you want to go. The alternative that I prefer is just picking your feature on the map and then hitting this button. That way you don't have to filter through a list of a bunch of stuff. It's just click, like say I want to go to this red dot,
Or you
click on that.
definitely don't want to go to that red dot
Yeah,
because it's
that
a
one,
wasp nest.
that one you want to avoid. That was a little Easter egg for Kit and Rowan who know my history out there, which I'll talk about it at the end. So yeah, this one definitely you don't
Gustavo
want
is
to
a
do.
wasp magnet for
Yeah,
those who...
yeah, and we'll see how that affected this harvest. I guess I should say. Um, and this is the other map. This is the only map where this is the only time this map is going to show up. But if you do need to do inventory, this is an inventory map. So this was created by Sam Castor, or a previous forester with us. He helped create the inventory to assess how much wood there was out there, how many, what the volume looked like. So this is the same thing. Put little pins on all these plots and then navigate to them if you need to. Okay. Okay, so there's two main features that you will stick to, and they're points and lines. So these are the points. These are great for navigating to locations. Put a point down and then start navigating to it. Establishing points of interest, and then taking notes on specific locations. So once you've put a point down, you can name it. In this case, it was at Wasp Nest. And then you can change the style, which in this case, I just put a classic hazard sign. I was looking for a B sign, but I couldn't find anything. Then you can add photos to this specific feature itself, and then a little description. This tells you what time you established it. This will give you the coordinates, and you can change the units and then the elevation. And these are the different icons that you can use on the map. So if you want to get creative with everything, which in this case I did because I wanted to make sure I did not go near those areas for the wasps. And then we move into lines. Um, so lines are best for establishing known straight lines by drawing them. There's a feature you can draw, which we'll get to later. This will also result in the feature for tracking. So whenever you finish a tracking or while you're tracking, you're actively creating a line on the map. And it's pretty much the same breakdown for points. So you can name it. The difference is the style. So for the style, you get the color and the thickness. Also, you can add photos. You can add your description, time it was created. This is the unique thing. It tells you your distance. So this is, I think I converted as like 2.5 miles. So for reference, this is what one of our technicians, how long they walked to just marking trees in a day. So 2.5 miles of walking, just marking a tree every now and then. Um, and then total elevation gain. And then for this, to change the features, it's just the color and the thickness. The thickness I usually don't change, but changing the stroke color is really good for coordinating what is what on your map. Because in a little bit, you'll see how chaotic it can end up being. So here's the different colors you can use and the different sizes. Um, this is an example that I tend to use. So whenever I'm laying out a harvest or doing any kind of investigation on the ground, streams are blue, boundaries are red. And then if you're doing maintenance coverage, like in this case, the tree marking that I mentioned, where you're just covering a large swath of land, I just make it white, just a pretty easy color to distinguish. So this is the photo section. So in this case, both lines and points you can import or just take photos while in the field. So in this case, it's hard to tell, but that's a wasp nest photo that I took. So I knew for sure there was a wasp nest. So I was not joking. And when you hover over those icons in the map, it'll actually show you as well what those photos are. And the cool thing about that is, if anyone is familiar with GIS or exporting KMLs, any of those features, these pictures will actually follow those KMLs and shape files. So they'll stay with this data. And I've tested it myself, and it does work. It's pretty useful for exporting, sharing, which again we'll get to in a little bit. And like I said, there's two options. So this option here is to actively take a photo. So if you're looking, you've hit that add button, the add photo button, then you can select this and your camera will show up on your phone, take it, and it'll show up here. This other option is if you've previously taken photos and you want to add it from your library. So this is another feature, drawing features. So for points, it's just a pin drop you can put down. Great for establishing points of interest, plots, navigating to specific areas. In this case, this was one good thing you can do is put a point there and then navigate to it, since it's a corner of a harvest unit. And the button for that would be on the main screen, just down here. This button, click on that, and then a pin will default pin will drop. And then if you want to move it around, you just got to click and hold it, and you can move it wherever you need it on the map. And yeah, this is the same old deal for the points. Drawing lines is much more useful. So in this case, drawing a line, so to draw, I should have put this in the other one, but to draw lines, it's this button right here, and then you can draw and measure. In this case, drawing this line right here gives you a couple of bits of information. First and foremost, the most important is how long that line is. And that's very useful for trying to figure out distances to whatever you might need from one point to the other. And the other one, in this case, because we had to set up a boundary, and that's an awkward line, it's not like a straight cardinal direction, it also gives you your bearing. So if you need to draw a line from here to here, you know what your bearing is on a compass. Yeah, so that's drawing features with lines. And then part two, these are sort of examples for this harvest unit. This feature here is the concept of yarding distance. So loggers don't like to yard wood that's over 1,000 feet. It just digs into their income. So one of the things that we like to do is when we establish a landing, in this case, this circle right here is a landing. We draw out to the farthest area of the harvest unit and we check the distance. If it's over 1,000 acres or feet, then we know we need to include some sort of mitigation, which might include another landing in the area. And then this right here is a good example of showing what a landing will eventually look like. So this would be the starting the draw line here. You drag it out, and then you click on the circle, and that'll turn that line into a circle. And that's just a good example of like seeing how big a landing would be, depending on your sizes. Okay, so now that you know all those features and how they work, now you got to start creating them. So this is how you create layers. Uh, Creating layers helps you a lot. It helps you organize everything. So on the layer button right here, this button right here on the main screen, and then you click on this one, and then these two options will show up. You'll click on create layer, and then it'll just a window will pop up with the name that you want to give it. In this case, this is a perfect example of how I like to set up my harvest layout. So I'll have a layer just for boundaries, a layer just for harvest features, a layer for hydro, and a layer for tree marking. And I'll explain later how that helps a lot.
And Gustavo, there was a quick question. Do you know if the bearings shown on Avenza are true or magnetic for the compass?
I'm not exactly sure. I'll have to look that up. But I'm sure it's a quick Google for Avenza would answer that question.
I can try Googling it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Okay, and so this is the next step, importing layers. So if the great thing about this, like I said, if it is geo-reference, all the information and data that you're getting can be sent to other people as well as other people can send it to you. So this is amazing again for coordination with our harvest team. Jal, our forest lead, Marissa, our forestry technician, we all share layers with each other constantly, trying to figure out what we've been doing. So for this, it's the same concept, but instead of hitting create layer, you'll hit import layer. So you'll hit this layer button, import layers, and then same thing. I'd usually go for cloud storage. Download your KMLs. In this case, these files have to be KML format. You could do shapefile, but that's a paid section. And then same thing. Select your couple of your KMLs that you want to show up, and then you end up with the layers here. And this is the chaos you end up with. So if this is bad management on our part, it's just chaos to try and figure out what exactly is going on here, which is why you should start with some proper layer management, because who knows what's going on here. So here's how you clean it up and move stuff around. So in this section, here are all your layers, and if you click these three dots, this will show up, and here are your most basic options. So in this case, to hide it, you just click hide, and once it's hidden, it'll turn into show, and that's what it looks like right there. So in this case, if you just want to look at, say, harvest features, you can click on all these and hide them, and then all you'd see was harvest features. Yeah, and then also moving them. So if you see here, this is the move button. So once you click move, it'll ask you which folder do you want to move it to, or in this case, which layer. So you can move stuff around. So yeah, and then active layers are really important. So whenever you're creating features or you're say put down a point or draw a line or track yourself to create a line, whichever layer is the active layer, that's where all those features are going to go into. So in this case, if I started tracking and I stopped, that feature would end up in this layer here I just called it layer. So say I was marking that day and I knew I was marking, then I'd swap it. I'd click on these three dots, and then set this as an active layer. And that way, all day, as I'm tracking, marking trees, then all that information will go straight to that layer. Now, sharing is caring 2.0. The other end is sending it out. So it's the same process. Once you find your layer, click these three dots and then export. And then in this one, this is where it gets you can get very selective. So this can all stay the same. This is just the name. This is the file type. Same thing. For a pay a premium price, you can export into everything, shape files, all the different files. And then tracks are always as track. And then you'd want to click on custom select. And then when you click on custom select, you'll want to click on this again. And then you can just check mark what features you want to do. In this case, if you want to do everything, you could just select the all features. But that's a lot. That's 110 different features on this map alone. And then it ends up like this. And then you just click on this, and then on your phone, it'll pop up the different types of formats you can send it out: email, text. There's all kinds of different ways to do it. So here's a excellent example here, covering ground. So this is one of the units that so this black line is what we permitted for a harvest. This blue line is what we planned on harvesting. So this method is using the tracking method. So Marissa, our technician, and I mark the trees in this case. And whenever we mark trees, we start tracking. And by the end of the day, we'd end up with lines that look like this. And this is why this is so useful. So while all three of us are coordinating, we know what's been hit. So this is just straight up a slideshow. So that's one day, that's another day, that's another day, that's another day, and so on. And by the end of it, we know we've hit every square acre of this as far as tree marking. So it's great for anything that you're spraying, just general maintenance, looking around everywhere. It'll show you where you've been pretty much. This is another example. This is laying a boundary. So this is great for, again, same thing, tracking. If you track yourself, then you know where you've been. In this case, it's both the harvest unit and what we plan on cutting. So for this, we used Avenza to make sure we're staying within what we want. So in this case, since this is a property boundary, this was compassed out. But then once we got down here, it was just walking around with the Venza out, making sure we're where we want to be. And in this case, you can see we did a pretty good job most of the way. There's a gap here and a gap here for a very good reason. These were wasp nests. So just in this one unit of 15.3 acres, we ran across 2 wasp nests. And this one, if you look closely, I ran quite a bit. So once I hit here, I just beelined out this way. And
beelines
yeah. And yeah, we completely avoided that spot. So we just went all the way around and came down here. Which is it's an interesting way of seeing what's happened to you before. And an interesting side story is while doing this kind of flagging, you usually have a roll of flagging with you to put flagging up. In this particular case, I had to roll over a log that was about a little over my waist height, so I didn't really stand on top of it and clamber over. I literally just rolled over it to get away from the wasps, and my roll of tape actually fell out of my pocket. So not only was this geo-referenced on a map, it was physically on the ground because I had dragged the tape all the way out to the road. So from this road to here, there was physically flagging on the ground all the way through. So yeah, so there's a couple wasps here. So there's some dangers out there. And that's pretty much it. I know I tried to blast through that, but there's so many great uses for Avenza that for pretty cheap. The free version gives you 3 maps to work with. There are some limited features, but most of what I talked about is accessible on the free version. If you want the pro version, you get more stuff for $30 a year, I believe, and unlimited maps. So you can have as many as you want. And there's definitely other features that I haven't played with because they haven't come up with, but that's pretty much my experience with using this program. Yeah.
and with the bees.
Yeah.
So I just dropped the links here in the chat for folks if you want to follow any of them, or if you already receive our newsletter. All of these links were in our last newsletter in one form or another. And just respond, we'd love if folks have any questions for how Gustavo uses either Avenza in particular or mapping in general, what it's useful for, how he approaches it. We are happy to open it up and have a more interactive chat and hear your questions and also hear your stories. Have you been chased by wasps through the woods, and how did you mark that particular chase? I did check the previous question. So Scott, the bearings on Avenza are true north as a default, but that can be changed to magnetic north in the settings. So true north, but you can choose either based on your preference. But do folks have any questions for either Gustavo or myself at this point? And Gustavo, could you tell us a little bit more about why wasps are always chasing you? Like, did you do anything to them? Is there a wasp queen or, some kind of wasp goddess that you harmed in the past that has created this vendetta? Or
All I know that is that the first time I got stung was completely by surprise and up at and near Ashford, and it must have been a queen that was dormant because it was in the middle of winter, so she must have been hiding in a bark or something, and I guess all the other wasps heard about it, so they're out to get me now.
yeah. Well, do folks have any questions? Scott?
Yes. I'm curious, Gustavo, if you or anyone else have encountered problems with the accuracy of the plat map lines. I've discovered that the Clallam County GIS system, those lines are significantly inaccurate. And I was just curious if you've encountered that and what you've done to work around that, if anything.
Yeah, so there's multiple ways of going about that. I have found some of them are slightly inaccurate, but usually if with enough digging around, you can find it. There's the two main ways is using the PLSS system, the Public Land Survey system, and that's those have usually corners and quarter corners. So using that, and I think I have. Um, um, Using that and parcel corners, you can it could improve your finding those, because the biggest concern that we've had is where there's boundary lines that are thousands and thousands of feet, and trying to get good cardinal direction shots is pretty hard to do that that far of a distance. But using both the PLS system and the parcel boundaries is pretty good. But other than that, I mean, where they place them on the ground is where they place them on the ground. If they misrecorded or whatnot, there's not really much you can do.
Okay. And you use those as like map overlays on the
Yeah.
event software?
Yeah, so
Okay.
usually when we start a harvest, the first thing we do is have both those. So before we even start the harvest, we have both the PLSS layer and the parcel layer. That way, the PLSS system, their corners are like thousands of feet apart, but parcels could be like 100 feet, 500 feet, depending on the size of the parcels. The problem with that is the parcels aren't always fully marked on the ground, not always. I know for Kit's property, that is a method that I used. She had a long stretch. If you notice on the map, there on the left side, there was a big long stretch, and that there's parcel corners along that. So we use that to realign ourselves pretty much, make sure we're still online.
Great. Thank you. Very helpful.
Yeah, no problem.
And there was a question in the chat. I didn't see LiDAR among the named layers, but the Ellis example seems based on it. How did you include it? And I think that would be the maps you use, Gustavo, right? Not the land mapper.
Yeah, so I wish I had put that in there. There's a great canopy shot. I completely forgot about it. But LiDAR is such an important tool, especially now with all the features we can create. The biggest one is slope. Being able to tell the slope for harvest operations is critical, especially up in the high alpine areas. Some machinery can't operate on certain slope types. So having that for harvest operations is pretty important. Uh, um, But in this particular case, one of the biggest things that we used LiDAR for was creating a canopy height layer. That helped tremendously to try to figure out where exactly we should harvest. A kid, if you don't mind me spilling the beans on the easement, we had a limitation of about 10% of the volume to be harvested. And to figure that out, we used LiDAR imagery to get canopy heights. And with those canopy heights, we can tell where the biggest trees are and where the most trees are. And using that information, that's how we developed that plot map, figuring out where these high density areas are. We tried to focus on that, especially since we had such a limited amount of volume that we were allowed to take. Oh, perfect. There you go. It's kind of blending in, Kit, but yeah, that's the photo. That's the image I'm talking about. I was gonna try and find it, but uh, but yeah, that's a yeah. um, let me see. I might be able to find it real quick. Where's it at?
Is that something you got through? How did you end up including it in Avenza? What was the process?
So for we didn't really use it for Avenza. Um, in this case, we used it more for management styles. So like in the office using ArcMap, or we created the physical layers of where we're going to focus on harvesting. And I actually just found it. So if you don't mind me sharing, Rowan. So here's that canopy layer that I was talking about. So that's what Kit was holding up. So if you notice here, down here, there's a lot of big old growth. Same thing here. And then we focused on this area as well. So yeah, figuring out where we should hit and where we should target for harvest is pretty important. Yeah. I hope I answered your question as expected.
Have other folks used Avenza in their forests? And how have you found it? Relatively user friendly, kind of challenging to work with? Yes, Kit.
I had no idea that this was full of layers. So I love having it on my phone so I can show people who want to see what work was done, where we are, and what it used to look like. Now I'm really curious to see a later version now that a lot of those tallest trees aren't there anymore, or at least they're significantly thinned.
Yeah, that's the key concept there. They're thinned out.
A great tool and a really good sort of public information tool.
And then I didn't really touch on it too much, but you don't really need ArcGIS or QGIS or any kind of those programs to actually physically start working on maps on your desktop. Google Earth Pro is a very great mapping tool. I don't know if they create georeference maps at the end, but all these layers that like the method that I showed for exporting these layers, you don't need to do any kind of formatting change. You can just directly put that into Google Earth Pro. KML is the file that they'll use. So if you want to start messing around with shape files and whatnot on Google Earth, that is also an option along with Avenza.
And what are the pros and cons of using Google Earth versus Avenza versus other apps that might be out there?
Yeah, so Avenza is the only one I've really used in the field. I've like I said, and it's really reliable. It's useful. It's cost effective. It's on my phone, which my phone is always on me, so there's no way I'm losing that. Uh, um, but then as far as where you send that information on mobile, you can send it, like I said, to Google Earth, which again, I'm not 100% sure. You can export georeference maps. But if you do send it to ArcMap for sure can create georeference maps that you can customize. So like this could be your starting point, and then if you want to add other features to a fixed map, you can using ArcMap. There is QGIS, which is kind of the same thing. I believe it's free. I haven't worked with it that much, but it should be pretty much the same thing as ArcMap. So yeah, and those are the main advantages. A Google Earth, I think the coolest thing that Google Earth Pro has, is that it actually has a sort of a time machine feature, which is I use all the time. Um, uh, and if you want me to explain, I can explain that. Send me contact and I'll explain, because it's amazing. One of the biggest things that I like for that is for aerial images are great for trying to figure out where hardwoods and conifers are. But if you go to Google Earth, uh, Google takes photos over forest all the time. So they'll have a little scrolling machine. Little you can scroll through the last probably 100 years, and with any luck, you'll find a picture that was taken during like fall or winter when all the leaves are gone on hardwoods. So it'll be extremely distinguishable on what's a hardwood and what's a conifer out there. And I've used that countless times at this point.
Can you offer some suggestions on when we would want to use Avenza and when we would want to use Landmapper? I mean, which one has advantages over the other?
So Avenza would just be a way to read those Landmapper maps. So Avenza won't create the maps for you. So Landmapper is a really good starting point. So it'll create these maps, pretty much what we've created. I mean, what I showed you was the canopy height map, and that also has a table at the bottom showing the height of these trees. But like Rowan said at the beginning, these are professionally made high. A lot of time got put in them to have this kind of accuracy compared to the ones that Landmapper made. So I guess the real question would be when do you go from Landmapper to a professionally created map? And in that case, it's just whenever it seems right, when you've used up as much information as you can on Landmapper. Which I've looked at a couple of especially these map comparisons, especially. I did notice Kit has plans to restore a root rot pocket that's about 10 acres, and Landmapper actually managed to find that. It actually did show that there is a pocket that has less trees, less density, and that's a great tool. If you create that and you see on those maps that there are pockets, it's probably a good idea to go check it out and see what's going on out there. But yeah, like I said, Landmapper is just a good starting point, if anything else.
Yeah, so Landmapper can create those files, or a professional forester could create those files, the actual physical map files that are usually a PDF, and then the application of Avenza can read it and then add layers on top of it, kind of like digitally drawing on a paper map that you might have,
Yeah.
but then being able to take that and share it and add to it. So it's kind of taking that base map, or taking the equivalent of, a piece of paper that you might have, and then adding layer upon layer of drawn additional information as you're monitoring your forest, as you're going through and finding those wasps' nests to avoid, or finding those areas of root rot that you might want to tackle in future land management, or mapping out where your snags are, or your wildlife piles, or areas where you found chanterelle mushrooms in previous years. So folks on our team usually are using it to lay out harvests and track changes in the forest over time, but it's really just a platform for you to put your personal history on the map and be able to monitor that over time. So Avenza is definitely the most user-friendly and accessible platform that we've used. Some folks Gustavo, have you used any of the hunting apps? There are some folks who use hunting apps to do monitoring of their forest.
Yeah, I've used Marissa and I, our technician, use the Hunter X app, and that's mostly just to make sure that we're not trespassing. I think that's the biggest feature on that app, is to make sure we're not crossing on someone else's property. But other than that, yeah.
I actually prefer the Onyx Hunt map. It's it does show you who the boundaries are, where the boundaries are, and allows you to track your roads and paths and make notes on things. It's been very helpful, and it's the nicest thing about it. It's very simple.
Simple is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a couple, but I think Onyx is probably the one that I've heard folks mention the most frequently. And that, I think, another really big advantage with some of the hunting maps is it does include a lot more property information. So you have information about the surrounding properties. There are some questions about how legal that is for it to be pulling that information, but that's not a question that we need to ask. Well, we have a few more minutes. If anyone has additional questions for Gustavo or me, although Gustavo is definitely the in-house expert here, or if people want to share their own experiences, feel free to unmute yourself, and the floor is open. And if not, we can close a little bit early and wish everyone a lovely, cozy evening, and hope everyone is looking forward to a lovely Thanksgiving. I know that's already on my radar, even though it's a couple of weeks away, but I already started planning for it and trying to figure out what sides I'm going to make. So haven't quite decided yet. So if anyone has any really good recipes, feel free to share them. But thank you all for joining this evening. And I will be sending out a follow-up email just with a couple of the links that I already shared in the chat. So if you didn't get to capture those will be in a follow-up email tomorrow. And if you have any other questions or get stuck in your own mapping process, feel free to reach out to us at any time. We are here to help. So have a good evening, everyone. Thanks so much.